Hi, so before I begin, let me tell you guys something about us. I'm a 30-year-old dental hygienist. I have been married to my husband for 2 years and we have been together for 6 years. My husband is slightly older than me, he is 39. He has been married before and even has a daughter from his previous relationship. He and his ex-wife got together in college and got married because she was pregnant, but that marriage didn't last long and they got divorced when their daughter was 2. They have partial custody of her and have been co-parenting her for 14 years. She has him for half the month and he has her for the other half. My stepdaughter, let's call her Abby, 16F, has always been a nightmare to deal with. When I first started going out with my husband, she was indifferent to me even though I tried to be friends with her. She rebuffed me and I figured that it would take me some time to win her over. But it's been 6 years now and she still hates me, so I don't think that was ever in the cards for us. She only started getting worse with time and she went from indifference to being horrible to me. She would throw tantrums whenever I would come over and be very nasty to me, even though her father would try his best to make her behave herself. She would be openly rude, make awful remarks about my appearance and stuff, and even call me a gold digger on more than one occasion. I almost broke up with my husband after dating for 2 years because she was getting on my nerves and I had been finding it really difficult to make my peace with her being around. I didn't want to make him choose between Abby and me because I didn't want to be one of those women who broke up a family, but that ended up happening anyway. After we had been together for 2 years, I told my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, that I couldn't deal with this anymore and if Abby didn't start behaving with me then I couldn't make this relationship work anymore because I'd had enough. He had been trying to talk some sense into her but she would always just ignore it and treat me badly. She accused my husband of preferring me over her whenever he tried to talk to her about the way she had been behaving. It had been difficult for me and even after 2 years, there was no sign of improvement, so I was seriously considering breaking up just for the sake of my own peace of mind. By then, I was spending practically all my time at his place and the days that he didn't have Abby, I was just fine. But as soon as she entered the house, I would start feeling extreme levels of anxiety and that couldn't be normal. So before he officially asked me to move in with him, I decided to talk to him about Abby. He told me that he was trying but his ex-wife was the one making matters worse by putting it into her head that if he got remarried, then it would be a threat to Abby and her place in the family. Abby still believed that she could get her parents to reunite because that's what her mother taught her. It wasn't because he was telling him love with my husband but mostly because she hated him and didn't want him to be happy. She hadn't been able to get alimony from the divorce and still held that against my husband because she felt that he owed it to her, even though they had equal income and split all the work equally. She felt entitled to it for no real reason and had been bitter in the aftermath of the divorce. My husband not caring in the least about her bitterness made her even more and she started using Abby to harass any woman who was a part of his life. But I really loved him and Abby wasn't going to drive me away. So he did the only thing that he could do and decided to threaten Abby by telling her that if she misbehaved with me again then he would permanently cut her off and make her live with her mother forever. Now Abby hated me but she did love her father and he had never threatened to send her away before, so that really scared her and she started behaving herself. She wasn't nice to me but she started to ignore me instead of being horrible to me, and that was a huge improvement. With that out of the way, he and I started living together, and even on the days that he did have Abby, it wouldn't be a problem for me because now we would just not speak to each other unless it was absolutely necessary. It felt strange in the beginning but I got used to it and I was much happier after that. So when he asked me to marry him, I said yes because now everything was finally working out. On the day of our wedding, Abby looked very upset but thankfully she didn't do anything. Part of the reason might have been the fact that my husband had given his sister strict instructions to keep an eye on her to make sure she didn't attempt to ruin the day. It was sad that he had to take precautions against his own daughter, but at least that prevented anything bad or embarrassing from taking place. Even after we got married, nothing much changed and Abby and I continued to be indifferent to one another. Just to be clear, I didn't have anything against her personally and I actually even felt bad for her because it couldn't be easy having a mother who was just using you to get back at her ex-husband. If she had ever approached me to apologize, I would have gladly accepted it and tried to be a good stepmother, but I couldn't accept an apology that I never received. And after the way that she had terrorized me for months when I first got together with my husband, I didn't have it in me to talk to her and try to befriend her. Things have been this way for a while and everybody has made their peace with it. Then about 7 months ago, my husband and I found out that we were pregnant and we were really excited, so we threw a party to announce it. Abby was there obviously, but she was very unhappy when she found out that the reason we were throwing the party was because I was going to be a mother. She actually stormed out of the living room in tears a few minutes after I made the announcement and my husband had to go after her to console her. He told me that she was upset because she was going to have to share her dad with another baby, but I knew that she was more upset about me becoming a permanent part of the family now. It became even more obvious when, after getting to know that I was pregnant, she started doing strange things around the house on purpose. She would leave her roller skates lying around inside the house in places they were not even supposed to be in, probably in hopes that I would trip on them and fall. More than once she had left strong-smelling food items out, knowing that they would make me nauseated after I entered my second trimester. But these were pretty things and I didn't let them get to me or bring it up with my husband because I didn't want to seem paranoid and freak him out. The last straw was what happened at my baby shower a couple of days ago, and I don't think I'm reading too much into that. Everybody had been invited to my baby shower and my husband had ordered a special cake for me, which was also supposed to be the gender reveal cake. We had waited because we wanted to combine both the events and everyone was really excited about it. I cut the cake and was about to bring out a slice so we could all see the color on the inside, but before I could grab it, I felt somebody pushing my face into the cake and holding it for a few seconds until my husband grabbed my shoulders and brought me back up. I already had asthma and I felt I was suffocating while my face was being held down inside the cake. As it turns out, Abby had been standing right beside me. She snapped and went crazy when I cut the cake and decided to shove my face inside it. She's around the same height as I am and much stronger since she's an athlete, so it was easy for her to hold me down. I heard later on that my husband had been so stunned by what had happened that it took him a few seconds to grab me and pull me back up. Then the two of us headed to the washroom so I could get cleaned up and change into fresh clothes. While I was changing and trying to process this, my husband told me to wait inside the room while he dealt with the situation outside. I kind of broke down when I was on my own inside the room because I thought that things were finally getting better, but I knew that as long as Abby was in this house, she would never let me have a moment of peace. I was honestly scared for my baby because I didn't trust her and I thought that she might try to hurt him after he was born. We did have the cake later and found out we were having a boy. I had made up my mind that I would have to talk to my husband and tell him that Abby needed to go. And if he didn't kick out after this, then I would leave him. It was a tough call to make, but I couldn't endanger my baby by living in a house with someone like Abby, who was clearly unhinged. But turns out there was no need for any of it because, by the time my husband came back into the room, he told me that Abby was gone and wouldn't be coming back. He'd been gone for about half an hour and I had been sitting alone in my room waiting for him to return while all our guests waited outside. Once he returned, we went back to the guests and apologized for what had just happened, but everybody was really understanding and they were mostly just concerned about me. After everyone had made sure that I was doing fine, we got back to the cake and had a subdued celebration when we found out that we were having a boy. After dinner was served, people cleared out pretty quickly because of how awkward and uncomfortable the vibe of the place had become after the incident with Abby. My husband and I were also really quiet because we were still in shock from what Abby had tried to do to me. Once all the guests had left, we got to talking and he told me that while I was in the room, he had come back out and dragged Abby away forcefully. She had just been standing in the same spot, looking really pleased with herself while everyone stared at her with horrified looks on their faces. But when he started dragging her out of the house, she started protesting and making a huge racket. He didn't stop and dragged her to the car and then dropped her off at her mother's house. He didn't have enough time to talk to her mother, so he just dropped her off and told Abby to explain to his ex-wife what had happened. She kept screaming at him about the car ride, but he paid her no mind because he couldn't let this go on and put me and our baby in danger. He had given her enough chances to become a better person, but she just wasn't going to change and he wasn't going to tolerate it anymore. He apologized to me because he felt like he had put me through a lot for the sake of his daughter, and we ended up crying and hugging. That's how relieved we were when Abby was finally gone. The next day, he dropped off all her clothes and stuff at her mother's place and told her that he wouldn't be taking her back anymore because he was done with her. He informed his ex-wife that he would be speaking to his lawyer shortly and they were going to renegotiate the custody terms formally, but until then, she would have to look after her because he couldn't put me and our baby at risk of being harmed by Abby. And she had proven that she was fully capable of doing that. He told her that she had made her this way and had encouraged her to be a brat throughout her childhood, so now she would have to take accountability for it and raise her. Her mother didn't take it well and refused to accept the responsibility of taking care of Abby on her own. Thankfully, Abby wasn't at home. She was at school, so she wasn't there to overhear the conversation because that really would have broken her heart and probably pushed her off the edge for good. Her parents were actually fighting over who had to keep her, but while my husband had genuine, valid reasons not to want her around anymore, her mother didn't have any and only said that she didn't have the time or resources to raise Abby on her own. For the record, she was the receptionist at a really small-scale family-owned firm, so it certainly wasn't as if she was the busiest person on earth and she was always back home by 6. As for the resources, my husband had agreed to pay her child support, but she didn't want that either, and it was pretty surprising. Because their fallout had been over money in the first place, and now that my husband was willingly offering her more money, way more than what she actually needed to raise Abby, she was rejecting it. It didn't add up, but even though my husband kept persuading her, she refused to take on that responsibility. Eventually, she agreed that she would look after her for a few weeks, but after that, my husband would have to arrange something for her. So overall, that conversation didn't go as planned, but my husband is sure that when they start renegotiating the custody terms legally, he won't have much trouble getting her to take in Abby. We have no idea why she doesn't want Abby because it's very obvious that the two of them have a better relationship than she does with my husband. And yesterday, we found out that even Abby doesn't want to stay with her mother full time, which was extremely shocking since I believe that she would love the opportunity to move out of here permanently. She called her father yesterday to apologize for what happened at the party, and she was crying while she said that she didn't want him to give up her custody. She was devastated when her mother told her that my husband was about to renegotiate the custody terms and that she might end up living with her permanently with no chance to ever visit her dad again. So now she wanted to apologize to me because she didn't want to lose her relationship with her father, and she kept pleading with us on the phone not to do this. She addressed me directly and told me that she promised she would try to be nicer and not let her emotions get the better of her and lead her into doing insane things. She also told me that she thought the cake thing would be funny and didn't consider the consequences of it while she did it, but she wanted to apologize for it from the bottom of her heart. It was difficult for both my husband and I to hear her out because she was crying hard, but we had to tell her that we couldn't take her back in. Because she might just lose her temper some other day, and my husband might not be at home to rescue me, and that could lead to something terrible happening. So it was best for all of us if she stayed away for a while, at least until our kid was older. I told her that I did feel bad for whatever she was going through, but I couldn't help her because this apology was coming really late. The damage had already been done and she couldn't take it back no matter how much she apologized. She started crying even harder when I said that and pleaded with me to reconsider. She said that she couldn't go through life without her parents, and that included her father. It was getting too much for me to handle, so I told her that I wish I could help, but it was just too dangerous. And then I disconnected the call because I was finding it very hard to stay firm while she was crying like a baby. It was just too much for me to take. I was already really emotional because of the pregnancy, and when I ended the call, my husband and I couldn't stop crying because of how difficult this had been for both of us, but we had to do this, for our own safety. However, nobody else seems to care about how tough it must have been for us to make this decision, since now everyone's blaming us. Or rather blaming me, to be more precise, for breaking up a happy family for my own selfish reasons. I don't understand what's selfish about not wanting to get hurt, since that's pretty much what Abby has been out to do ever since we know each other. Nobody else knows much about our situation, but ever since the phone call, my husband's ex-wife, her parents, her friends, and some of his relatives have been texting him to say that he is making a huge mistake and that it's not fair for me to demand that he give up on Abby. Especially now when she is going through something difficult, it's more important for us to be there for her rather than abandon her just because things are tough. The number of people who have told us that what we're doing is wrong and are blaming me for breaking up their family is so overwhelming, that now I don't know if this is the right thing to do anymore. Ida, for rejecting my stepdaughter's apology and not letting her move back in with us. Update 1. Hi. So first of all, thanks for all the comments and reassurance that my husband is indeed on the right track. Now coming to a couple of things that a lot of you had said, regarding why exactly it had taken my husband so long to kick Abby out, even though behavior had been nothing short of terrible all along. Of course, as a father, he would not want to give up on his only child, and no matter what he would want to make the best of the situation just so he could at least try and make her a better person. There was also the fact that if he let her live with her mother, she would most certainly turn out to be the worst version of herself because her mother was an enabler and encouraged bad behavior. I don't think any father would want that for his kid. So no matter what Abby did, he put up with it because he knew that he wanted to continue trying and didn't want to give up on her as a lost cause. Because she was still young and he believed in her and felt that he could make her better, that's why it took us so long. Because my husband believed in Abby and I believed in him. I could have left quite easily and never would have been caught in this mess in the first place, but I really love my husband and always have. I think he is the perfect man and I wouldn't have given up on this, no matter how badly his daughter behaved with me. So everyone who was telling me that I was a fool to marry a man who already had a child from a previous marriage, maybe I was a fool, but I don't know. I feel like being with him makes it all worth it. So I hope that explains why this went on for so long. That being said, we are still sticking to our decision to make Abby live with her mother because we can't afford to have her back at the moment. It's just too risky and neither my husband nor I want to take that risk. It was stupid of me to take whatever other people were saying seriously because most of these people don't even know the real situation here. Most of them were Abby's mother's cronies, so in all probability, they just wanted us to take her back and couldn't care less about whether she and her dad were really a happy family or not. We still haven't been able to figure out why she doesn't want Abby, but my husband is trying to get the bottom of it. He thinks that the truth is going to come out anywhere when the legal proceedings start, so it's just a matter of time. He has already spoken to one of his cousins who works with troubled kids and has been discussing the idea of rehabilitation centers for Abby in the future, and I think it's a fantastic idea because that might help her out. Definitely more so than living with her mother will. For the time being, of course, she has to live with her. Because nobody else wants to take her in. My husband had asked his parents, but they declined because they said that they were too old, and after what they saw at the party, they didn't want to take her in and regret it. His ex-wife has been hounding him almost daily to think about what they are going to do regarding Abby. And she has really been guilt-tripping him and trying to make me the bad guy here. She believes that my husband has lost his mind because of me and is putting me and the new baby first, forgetting about Abby. Which is crazy because he had tried to balance everybody for a really long time, but she didn't seem to care about that. She had made things worse for Abby herself by rewarding her bad behavior and teaching her that she needed to drive other women away from my husband. So this is really on her, but she very conveniently has been trying to make my husband feel guilty just for looking out for his family. It's alright though, because the custody terms are going to be renegotiated in a couple of days, and then we will all know why exactly she's so opposed to the idea of taking her own daughter in. Update 2. Hey. So it's been 2 weeks since Abby moved out and my husband met with her mother this morning to negotiate the custody terms again. And today they finally found out why exactly she didn't want to take her in. Her mother is just as terrible as I had expected, and I can't say that I'm surprised. So apparently, my husband's ex-wife has been working from home for a while for a company based out of LA and has been offered a job there, so she might be moving away in a few weeks. Her plan initially was to just leave without a word and then we would be forced to take care of Abby because there was nothing much that we could do once she was already gone. However, it got derailed because of what Abby pulled off at the baby shower and now she was probably going to be stuck taking care of her for the rest of her life. She had a total meltdown and they had to adjourn the session because they couldn't continue while she was crying and acting crazy. Even the mediator seemed really scared. When my husband came back home and told me about this, he seemed really upset because he felt like his daughter's future was just doomed and there was nothing he could do to prevent it. I tried to comfort him but I didn't really know what to say because in a way, he was right. There really wasn't much that we could do here. Neither parent wants custody and while my husband had genuine reasons not to want her around right now, her mother's reasons were kind of selfish but still couldn't be overlooked completely. He had spoken to his lawyer and was told that there was a very real chance that she might end up having to enter the foster care system if neither of them stepped up and that was a really sad thought. Even though what she did to me was horrible, I still wouldn't wish something like this upon her, or anybody else for that matter. Because she's just a kid at the end of the day. She has had a rough life and I don't mean rough because her parents didn't have money or whatever, like most people mean it. Rough because her mother used her to get back at her father and didn't really love her. Because if her mother did have any love for Abby, she wouldn't have used her like a pawn in her crazy mind games. I don't like that kid if I'm being really honest but I don't blame her for how she turned out, I blame her mother. She is the root cause of all evil here. I can't believe she had planned to just abandon Abby with us and take off so she could enjoy her fabulous new life in LA. I hope she gets fired or something, she would totally deserve it. Update 3, so it's been a while but my husband has finally decided what he's going to do regarding Abby. He made her mother sign away her rights before she left for LA and I think that it's a really great move. Because that's going to teach her a lesson that she can't have her cake and eat it too. She was against it at first but my husband told her that she could either stay here and take care of her daughter or she could choose her fancy new job, and she chose her job. He didn't mince his words and told Abby the truth about why his mother was gone and now she would have to start rehab to work on her issues. And only then would she be allowed to rejoin the family. He thought that she would protest but surprisingly, she was quite okay with it. In the past couple of weeks, she has really changed, probably because she realized that her mother never had her best interests at heart in the first place and she had been played. The only person who had ever been rooting for her was her dad and now she owed it to him to obey whatever he said and turn over a new leaf. She was a lot more subdued as a person now and it was quite sad but I hope that rehab works for her and she comes back better. My husband spoke to his cousin and arranged something for her. It's a 6-month program so by the time she comes back, my baby will be born. I honestly hope for nothing but the best for Abby. Heaven knows that kid deserves something good to happen now. Update 4, hi guys. So I just gave birth to our baby boy about 4 weeks ago and my husband and I are thrilled to share that news with you guys. I feel like you guys have also been an equal part of our journey, just as much as our real life friends. The baby was born healthy and there were no complications, thankfully. We even allowed Abby to be there for when the baby was born. There has actually been a lot of improvement in the 2 months that she has spent in the rehabilitation center and I almost feel like she is a normal kid now. The two of us haven't worked past our differences yet. I think we are going to keep that for when she comes back home for good. But she is nice to me whenever we meet and is actively trying to show us that she is not the same psychotic brat that she was up until a couple of months ago. She hasn't said it to me verbally yet but I can tell that she is trying to make up to us for whatever she put me through, just because her mother wanted her to. And I'm looking forward to the day that we can all be a happy family for real now.